Community Beacon, Fridays at 6:30 EST, with your hosts Michaeldseville and Joel Simmons. A channel whose focus is liberty. A place where the lessons discussed and taught will create openings to a more open and freer mindset. A mindset where you may reach the height of your potential and excel. Here are your hosts, Mike and Joel.
On what is going on, people? It is Community Beacon, which means it's Friday. It's around 6:30. July 21st.
Woo!
We are here. We are here to make it happen. We appreciate you all for checking in each and every Friday. I am one of your gracious hosts, Mike Seville, your realtor up here in northern Palm Beach County.
Realtor extraordinaire!
And on the other side of the screen, we got the brother with the enthusiasm, the excitement, my brother from another mother. We got Joel Simmons with the Tenacity Foundation. How have you been, brother?
Excellent. You know what? I'm doing wonderful. And I'm just so glad to see the real estate king, Michaeldseville, one more time. Y'all see my dog?
Yeah, you see.
I got this thing on top of my couch, so my dog doesn't ruin it, because sometimes it likes to dig into the couch. Man, this is not dirt. That's not dirt right there.
Timmy's trying to ruin your fun. He's trying to break in all your fun. Man, guys, so we're going to get into this episode. Probably be real short today, but we're here anyways. Live. Well, not live, but I'll schedule this for a short while later. Guys, remember, real quick housekeeping. Remember to like, share, comment, hit the notification button, depending on what platform you are on. Follow, comment. We're here. We will definitely answer any of your questions, any concerns, anything that you want to put forth, and we're engaging in this conversation we are having this evening. Of course, on Mondays, you have What It Takes. I'm dropping that each and every Monday. That drops at around 4:30. Check me out. I'm talking about real estate, and I'm talking about mindset issues. So check me out Mondays, What It Takes, every Monday, and I don't miss a beat. Praise God.
Amen.
Of course, on Wednesdays, we have It Starts With Who, brother?
Starts with me.
Yeah,
Listen, y'all, we are still having a great time, and it starts with me. Shout out to my man, Jomer. That guy is awesome. I may be doing the interviews, but Jomer is really creative in making those things look beautiful. And I'm going to tell you something. The viewmanship is just increasing and increasing. And listen, I'm not even doing anything to try to get it to increase anymore. Just doing it because I love to do it. I love the ability to be able to speak with people across the nation and across the world. I mean, we've had guests from Japan and Europe and Australia, and Africa, Nigeria, and then we have people just right around the corner in Seattle and Seattle, Washington, North Carolina, Miami, just all over the place, Montana, just great people, speakers that are charged $50,000 to speak for our keynote speeches are showing up on our shows and giving you their best. So please show up, be there with us for It Starts With Me every single Wednesday at 12:30. Awesome. And then we culminate. We bring it right back here for Community Beacon, where you get a chance to see that awesome brother over there, Michaeldseville, and I get a chance to hang out with him for, a half hour, whatever. And what was that last show that we have about Beethoven, brother?
The Male Perspective. Yeah, guys, check that out. That drops every Tuesday. Awesome conversation. Just had a conversation with Pastor and Jamie and Lovett. I believe Jamie's over at Friendship. Yeah, so check out Jamie. He's the new pastor over at Friendship. I think that happened a couple months ago, so he's been really busy. So he and I actually on the last episode got a chance to sit down for a one-on-one. So love getting that brother's perspective. And without they told me that in Toastmasters, don't say further ado. they said it doesn't mean anything, but I'm going to say it anyways. Without further ado, without further delay. How about that? Without further delay, we're going to get into the show. And this show, I thought that it was interesting. Some real conversations that were had over the last couple of weeks, brother. I know you've been away. You were in Vegas last weekend with your boy, with Jonah. So shouts out to Jonah navigating those Las Vegas streets. I'm sure you guys had a blast out there for the convention, and I think just that one-on-one time. It's awesome to see fathers and their sons and getting out and getting that exposure, and I think exposure for both of you guys. So it's awesome to get that exposure together. But I wanted to get into this show in regards to different distinctions, just the way that we approach certain things, and if we can kind of just reframe our thought process, reframe our attitude, there's a lot of opportunities, and not only opportunities, but a lot of relationships that we can actually take to the next level, or there might be some relationships that we don't necessarily need to be a part of. And one of the first distinctions that I wanted to bring up were these two different words, and the words were alignment and agreement. Alignment and agreement. Oftentimes when we're having conversations and we're talking about different things, there may be someone across from you or around you, or just all together. There might just be a conversation being had by several people that we may not necessarily agree with. There may not necessarily be anything wrong with what's being said, but you just can't pull your full force agreement. There's several reasons why you may not agree. I mean, it may just be a full-on, I just don't agree with it, and that's fine. People can agree to disagree, I think, as long as you do it in a respectful manner. But sometimes we just don't have the information.
Yes.
So I've seen where you can get into some dangerous waters when you start agreeing on something because it sounds good, and this person has different things, experiences and thoughts and information that they're bringing to the table, but you don't, and it makes sense. Like we can definitely make a lot of different logical arguments, 1 + 1, and because of our different experiences and relations, we can kind of say, okay, that makes sense. But until you do your due diligence on it, and this I think this is really key as a man, is in regards to when we're having these conversations, just a man, period. Before everything, you're a man, right? So as a man, period, is to be careful about certain things that you kind of stand on and agree on. And oftentimes we're agreeing, and here's what happens with the agreement is that sometimes we agree with something, we put it back in our consciousness, and it just starts to marinate there. And next thing you know, it becomes an ideology. It becomes something that now all of a sudden we're just full out in force about, and we haven't necessarily done our due diligence on the subject. So what I've started doing was, instead of agreeing with someone, especially when I don't have all the information, is I start to say, well, I can be aligned with that. And and just in that different phrases, I'm aligned with that, is that, okay, I can see how that can happen. I can see that point of view. I can be in alignment with it, but I'm not all on board with it. Brother, what do you think about that? Those, separating those two distinctions, those two words.
Yeah, man. So I guess I have to hear a little more about this as far as being aligned versus agreeing. I want to hear more about that, because to be in alignment, I think we should pull up the definition as well, of just alignment versus agreement, to kind of like in a philosophical way, because to agree with somebody doesn't necessarily mean that. So there's like two types of agreements, right? It's like there's an agreement acceptance. And I just entered a third choice in there, acceptance. You talk with your wife, and she says, don't you like this color? And you're like, yeah, it's all right. Was that a true agreement, or was that an acceptance? Maybe you don't like the house being painted blue. You really like it being painted gray, but you're willing to accept the blue, because it's working. So you accept it. And the other thing is just like with alignment, it's like, what exactly does that mean? If I'm aligned with somebody, does that mean that I'm ready to, is that full commitment? Is alignment like full commitment? So I think that for me, I would have to understand those definitions, and then maybe I could break it down from there. But I do agree with you. There's that word being used. Agree with you that that there must be a significant distinction between them. At the end of the day, though, it really comes down to how well, when we're talking about relationships, how well I can work with the person on the other end, and how much effort I want to give into truly understanding what they're saying, what they desire to do, and where they desire to go. Because I believe that for the most part, when it comes down to an agreement, an alignment, or even acceptance, it all comes down to how much we are really thinking about the other person rather than just ourselves. I think that that's where the hang up is at. Most of the time, people, when they're speaking with somebody else, they're just waiting to talk. They're not really concerned too much about listening. They hear one word, two words, and they say, I got an answer. And now they're just waiting for their opportunity to speak whatever they're going to say. Now, just for everybody out there, I don't want to end this conversation, and I got to make some moves. So what I'm going to do is something that you all may not have seen before, but I'm going to go on microphone only. So you won't have my view up there. I think I got a picture or something like that. It'll look like that. But you're going to have my mic because I'm going to stay here.
Yeah, we've seen it before. Oh yeah, so here's the agreement. The definition of alignment, and I actually want to speak to the point in regards to what you were saying. And you were talking about the waiting for you to speak, which we're talking about people being heard and people actually being listened to. And I've actually just started reading a book that talks about reading, and specifically this guy talks about deep listening. And one of the things that gets in the way of communication on the back and forth is that we're waiting to speak a point or have something to say or interject or add to the conversation, as opposed to listening to what it is, that fully listening and being open to what the person says, and not only what they say, but ultimately what they don't say. Because oftentimes in conversations, things are being said, but there are some hidden there's hidden thoughts within those things. The proverbial read, you got to read in between the lines. So it's very, very important for you to be present in a conversation, waiting. You're not waiting, but just listening to what the person says, because who knows what it may open up. So I love that, brother, because I'm all about the deep listening, especially on the journey that I'm on currently. So real quick, so the definitions, just for quickly, in regards to alignment and agreement. Alignment says it's a position of agreement or alliance, and then
That's interesting.
And then the agreement is it says it's a negotiated and typically legally binding arrangement between parties as to a course of action. And I guess that's kind of what I was getting in. That metaphorically speaking, when you start to put it into your subconscious, and that's why I wanted to emphasize the difference between the two. The agreement is actually like we're moving forward with this, and although it may not necessarily be legally binding, I'm thinking that when you put it into the back of your mind as an agreement, I agree with the stance that this person is taking without their due diligence. I'm taking this person on the word of it, or on the way that the logic sounds to me, without actually doing your due diligence on it. I think it can bring some dangerous points on it. And then when you're aligned with it, it's saying that, okay, we can move forward with it, but it's just a position of the agreement and not necessarily, that binding action that this definition speaks to. And then I want to go because I know, brother, you're moving. Here's another one, and I thought this was interesting, and I want to save the best for last. I have three different distinctions. This second one is the reacting versus responding. The reacting versus responding. But I don't know if you want to start. You want to talk, or you want me to talk on it?
I love that. I'd love to say a couple of words on it: acting versus responding, the action versus response. Just because I feel like we run into these types of scenarios so frequently in life. Where sometimes we began to move before we even begin to think.
Yep.
And everything needs a period of time of thought. Everything does. I mean, it doesn't mean that you cannot respond quickly. It doesn't mean that, especially if the more we think about things and the more we come to a conclusion, So I don't mean think and thought for forever, for a long period of time, except it needs it. And I don't mean toggling backwards and forwards between should I or shouldn't I, being indecisive. But I mean, when we get to the point where we've weighed the pros and the cons and we've made a decision, because a decision is better than no decision, because no decision is a decision not to decide, which by default is still a decision. So, to respond, the more we use our faculties to consideration and weighing in what's good and what's not, I believe that the response time actually shortens. And for us, it could seem as if it still is long inside of our own minds, but in actual reality, we're making decisions, maybe it took hours before, now it's down to minutes, now it's down to seconds. And some people may look at us as if, what? How can you make such a decision like that? I mean, that's a $100,000 decision. That's a $10,000 decision. That's a decision of life or death. And we're making them instantaneously, but not because we just reaction. That's what it was. Thank you. Not just because we're just trying to decide on something, but because we've exercised our decision-making faculties to the point where we have developed muscles in weighing out what is right and wrong, and we've developed a sixth sense to help us to not just react, to not just do something because, kind of like when you touch the face of the hot iron and you just pull your hand away and you scream. That's a reaction, but a response may be pull your hand away because it was hot, but then you also unplug the iron and then you take your hand and you begin to, cool it off, actively cool it so that you don't suffer further injury. And I think that that's the benefit of response, not suffering further injury or not causing injury by by your response.
Let me tell you something. That reaction is probably the reason why you have all these apologies coming later. Those apologies are often preceded by a reaction, and I would even say, just to make it real simple, I almost feel as if reaction is emotionally driven. It's really based on emotions, whereas responding, don't get me wrong, emotions plays a part in everything, but responding, you get a little bit more logical thinking that's going on between there. Quick story. Oh my gosh, and the brother was involved with it. We were at a meeting in Jacksonville, and we must have been sitting in maybe the 10th or 12th row. And we were sitting there, we were listening to people that were on the stage, and it was me and the brother on the other side of the screen, Mr. Joe from the Tenacity Foundation. And someone on stage, I believe, passed out. And my reaction was, what just happened? And by the time I had my reaction, I looked over, you responded because you were already on the stage attempting to work with the person who had passed out. That also goes to the point of when you were saying that you have been working this thing out. You have logically, like, you have already trained for these things. You've already come into this with training. You've already thought about these different things and how to respond. And then your response, it fell to the training that you already had, as opposed to my reaction, which was like, I almost want to say it was a freeze moment. You were already on stage helping that person. So it's like, I think if we start to err, and this just goes back to this man conversation I kind of briefly spoke upon earlier, is that as a man, we do definitely have these different reactions and due to our emotions, etc. But in spite of, if we can just get to that response part of it, if we can start to train ourselves to respond to it, give it a little bit of thought. Oh, your child did something that wasn't within, okay, let me, I see a lot of the old school men, they used to be like, they send you to your room and then they come and have a conversation with you, as opposed to the outburst of just screaming or whatever it is, talking loudly or roughly or whatever it is. Like, you give it some thought as to how to handle a situation versus just that impulse of whatever the emotion that was the emotion that was what's the word, elicited from the stimulus. I don't know if the brother, you still with me?
Yes, I'm still with you, and I agree with you.
And to keep this moving, and these different thought process, these different distinctions, they do, I think they do need deeper thought and a deeper conversation. But just because of the, our time, we're gonna have to go. We'll do it another time. But I think these definitely deserve some deeper thought and deeper conversation. And here's here's a distinction that, let me see if I can type this in here, that really resonated with me this week, and I think we spoke about it briefly. You all forgive my.
Yeah, you were asking me if I was still with you, and I wanted to say, because I remember that. I remember we were all sitting there together, and for me, that incident was a response, and it was because of my training. It was because that's something that I was used to. I had done multiple times, and so it may have looked like a reaction to the outside eye, but for me, it was like, okay, this has happened before. When these types of things happen, this is what I do, ABC. And it made it a quick decision for me. And so, like, you mentioned something else that was, was almost like prolific, because you mentioned about fathers, old school fathers, how they would send kids to their room and then they would take time to think. And this is so important in dealing with relationships, father and son relationships, mother and daughter relationships, husband and wife relationships, parents and children, and children's and parent relationships. When we just take the time to, somebody says something and we get offended, the scripture says offenses must come, but woe unto those in whom the offense cometh. So it's like, offenses are going to come. People are going to offend us. When we kind of, I want to use the word wake up, but I don't want to say it in such a harsh way. But it's like when we realize that we are going to be offended. This is going to be a life of offenses. Jesus Christ could not get through this world without being offended. He couldn't. He had to come down here and bear the burdens of all of us,
Uh-oh. Think we lost you, brother.
And it's just like when we get to the point where we understand that offense
Brother, we losing. You're breaking up. And he was. It seems as if we always have these technological difficulties when he's starting to get to the crux of it.
Am I back on?
Yeah, you're back on. Last thing I heard was when Jesus Christ lived the life of offenses, or didn't get through life without any offenses.
Yes. So, I mean, when we realize that, listen, Jesus himself didn't get through a life without offenses, and we start to take that to heart. We say, okay, so if he had to go through offenses, there's definitely going to be some offenses I want to go through. What do I do next? This is a huge mindset shift, because at that very moment, even if you're not good at it, at that very moment, you from this point on will always think about your reaction. And I said reaction. You're going to think about your reaction. Was that a good reaction? How did what was I thinking? What was I doing? And what ends up happening is by thinking about your reaction, you begin to develop a response plan. Because now you're thinking about your reaction. You're thinking about, how can I make this better? What could I have done differently? What did I do wrong? Did I do something wrong? Was it my fault? Was it their fault? Was it someone else's fault? Was there no fault? What was it? What was it? And at the time, that's when you start to develop a response plan. A response plan for how you deal with your wife, a response plan for how you deal with your kid, a response plan for how you deal with your boss, your supervisor, a response plan for what you do inside the grocery store when somebody bumps your basket, a response plan for when somebody cuts you off in traffic, a response plan for every single thing. You begin to develop response plans because you want to react responsibly. You create response plans to react responsibly, which is a response. And from that point on, you start to develop a way to deal with situations. This is a huge distinction.
This is the way. And just for clarity, brother, I said I reacted. You responded. I want to make that clear when that situation happened up there when we went to that convention. I was in reaction mode. You were in response mode. But yeah, absolutely. The plan. This is the way, as they say in The Mandalorian.
Yes.
this is the way. This is some, you can call it human being, but I'm a man, so this is man thing. And this is how you start to work on getting to the next level. This is the way of the old man. This is my grandfather coming back to me and sitting me down after having a fight with one of my cousins or something. This is my father going away and coming back, and we can add to it. We spoke about trust before, and you spoke, brother, about giving a time frame on getting back on responding, how long it's going to take, and not leaving people to kind of guess where you are. Predictability breeds trust. So that was an awesome, and in developing that response plan, I love that. I love that distinction. And last but not least, here it is. Disrespect versus disappointment. Disrespect versus disappointment. And I really want us to really think about these two different distinctions. Because what I've started seeing in just people's confrontations and relationship issues, it could even be work issues, whatever, is that we are handling disappointment, us being disappointed at a person because of whatever expectations we possibly had. Probably didn't even express our expectations. We never probably communicated them. And because we never communicated our expectations, possibly, or maybe you did, maybe you didn't, we became disappointed in the person. And instead of treating the person from a disappointment aspect of it, oh, I'm disappointed in this person, and now I get a chance to, and now I can communicate this disappointment, we tend to treat the disappointment as if it was disrespect. And I thought about this distinction because what happened, specifically in my tradition and culture, when you're children, you hear a lot about being disrespectful. Oh, you were being disrespectful. You're being disrespectful to your parents. You're being disrespectful to your sister, whatever it was, whoever it was. You were being disrespectful to someone. And normally this is coming from an adult talking to you as a child, a 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8-year-old child who can't even really process a word that's as far as disrespectful. All we see is, and I think how we kind of take it in as is we disappointed this figure, this parental figure, this person that we looked up to, this person that we value. And so we take that as a child and we take that throughout life. And when we treat someone disappointing us as disrespect. Now, disrespect is a different thing than disappointment, and how you treat it is differently as well. Because when someone disrespects you, that's almost like it's a confrontation. Whereas disappointment is more so an explanation. There could be more communication in disappointment. You disappointed me. Let me take some time to think about it, and then we can have, and because we need to have this conversation. But disrespect it could be a cardinal offense for some people. And when I started looking at distinction, saying, well, did my child, did they disrespect me, or am I just feeling really disappointed? And when I'm able to come from, okay, well, no, this is actually a disappointment. They didn't disrespect me. It's disappointed because it's a disappointment because I probably didn't clearly communicate my expectations, or maybe I did communicate my expectation, or maybe I didn't do it at all. I just thought that, oh, this is the way it's supposed to be. Almost sometimes forgetting that at one point in time I was a child and I was making mistakes as well. But if you are, let's say this is a relationship, because this was an interesting thought process. I was listening to someone they were talking about their significant other always wanting to play the video games. This is a older male playing the video games, and they were working, and they would come home and they would see this person playing the video games. And because that person was playing the video games, the person who was coming home from working or doing whatever it was they were doing or taking care of the children, they would disrespect the person playing the video game. Now, when you think about it, it's like, so why are you upset? You're not upset. This person didn't disrespect you by playing the video game. This person is disappointing you for whatever reason. And a lot of this stuff we got to work within ourselves, right? Because we got to have these conversations in regards to standards and thought process and communication. But just staying with this distinction of this person disappointing you, it doesn't warrant disrespect, because as a human being, everyone should be respected. This is a human being. However, when we start to get into disrespect, it takes it up to another notch and to another level. So I want people to actually, if you're listening to this conversation, man, I'm talking to men, really pay attention to the distinction of this disrespect versus disappointment. And brother, I hear you going. Let me get you talking so we can go ahead and end the show.
Are you able to hear me?
I can hear you now. Yeah.
Okay. Well, you know what? I think that's powerful right there. I have a question.
Yeah.
You know, what's the definition of disrespect, and what's the definition of disappointment? Disappoint. You know, because
you working with it. You working me today.
I almost want to lean. I'm sorry.
No.
I'm sorry, man. I appreciate you for helping me out, because because I got a thought in my mind, but I definitely want some clarity, especially on disrespect. And I'll still give my viewpoint, and we'll find out if my viewpoint aligns with the definition.
So which one you want? Both of them. You want both of the definitions?
Good. Both is good, because we're talking about distinction. But disrespect, in my viewpoint, is it's malicious.
70% malicious.
Yeah.
70% malicious, maybe more. I actually want to lean more to like 90% malicious. What did disrespect say? Sadness, displeasure, caused by non-fulfillment.
I got that's disappointment. I'm pulling up disrespect now.
Okay. So, disrespect is like malicious. And this is a huge point that you just made. It's like, man, that is something that needs to be put on a 1-minute video on YouTube right there. Because many times we walk in a room, and like even my son will say that level of disrespect, lack of respect or courtesy, so I look at that as just being malicious. When you've decided you're not going to respect somebody, even in a business place, there's supervisors that you have that you don't agree with, that you don't align with, right? But they are your supervisor. So you choose whether or not you're going to backbite. You choose whether or not you're going to talk crazy about them behind their back. You choose whether or not you're going to fight them tooth and nail. Is that disrespect?
I got disrespect on the screen. Lack of respect or courtesy.
Right. I'm just saying, hypothetical question.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Individual. Okay. Is that disrespect to your supervisor? Because you chose not to respect them. For whatever the cause is, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter whether they're right or wrong. There's a way to speak with everyone. And just like you were just saying, brother, you're like, everyone deserves respect. But there's another philosophy, respect is earned, not given. And it's like, okay, I get that too. My whole point is dealing with young people, especially, when it comes down to disrespect, it's malicious. I believe it's like 90% malicious, because if somebody was accidentally disrespectful, then once you expose it through communication, they're gonna apologize and say they never meant to do it at all. And if they apologize and say they never meant to do it at all, then that means that they never had a lack of respect.
They just didn't know. That means that they were ignorant. So therefore, it was not disrespectful. You gotta remove that title because they never meant to do it. They just didn't know, if they're being honest in a world full of honest people. Right. So then at that point in time, it's like, okay, so you were disappointed. You saw, you believed something was going to be generated out of this individual. So I love this conversation that you brought up because I found this thing to be true especially in dealing with my son. I learned a lot through my daughters, but when I got to my son, testosterone came about and he's got his own mindset, his own way, he's trying to make his mark in the world. And it's like, I hear these terms. I can't believe he's so disrespectful, or he was disrespectful, or this is that and the other. And I look at it and I go in there and I speak with my son, and there's no disrespect at all. None. Occasionally I might be disappointed that he chose to do something that he shouldn't have chosen to do. But in the grander scheme of things, I see his compassion hasn't wavered. His love hasn't wavered. His desire to be a quote unquote good child hasn't wavered. It's just there's a level of thought that's inside of him that believes that what he is doing is a better way.
Right.
That's something that we got to look at that. Going back to your R&R words, I think it was your R&R words, right? Respond versus react.
Yeah.
Going back to that, we got to look at that and say, okay, we have to dig into these relationships and get the information. We're not getting enough information. You start off with that, Mike. We're not getting enough information, and that's the reason why our communication is failing. We don't have enough information. We don't have enough respect. And the minute respect goes out the door is the minute that we stop looking for information, and we begin to go into more of an assumptive response or an assumptive reaction. We begin to go in assumptive reactions because we don't care. We don't care anymore.
Once we align, that's why I said it's so important for us to make the distinction between the disrespect and disappointment. Because disappointment, we have conversations to be had. Man, right. I'm disappointed in how what you did or how you approached this or the choices that you made. I'm disappointed in it. But I lost respect for you because of the choices you made or the whatever. Then that conversation turns into now we're going in a whole different street. We're going down a different path, right? And then you mentioned because I know it's a saying and it's a platitude. Respect is to be earned. I don't know. I think as a human being, we should all have some form of respect for each other. I think reverence is earned. To like revering someone, and there's difference. Here's another distinction. I'm not gonna get too far into it. The appreciation versus the celebration. I don't understand I appreciate a lot. I don't like to celebrate a lot. You understand? But everything should be, I should be don't go where I'm tolerated, go where I'm celebrated. What are you talking about? Go where you're appreciated. Because people can easily take that celebration away from you, but a person should always appreciate someone if you intend on that person being in your life. I'm not gonna celebrate everyone every day. Besides the Most High, but going back to this respect, and once respect is taken out of it, we have to be very careful because this is what I see in the community is that when you get disappointed. And because we're not perfect, right? We're going to do things throughout our lives that is going to disappoint someone, and people are going to do things that are going to disappoint us. There's almost no good going around it, but we should always have some form of respect for people, because I'm telling you, once you no longer have a respect for a person, you can easily start to make them less than, start to dehumanize them. And when you start to dehumanize them, then all of a sudden, this is a slippery slope, and it happens very quickly. So just thinking about those different things and thinking about those different distinctions, I think they're very powerful. And if we can make those distinctions now, when we look at someone, people aren't all evil. We don't need to demonize someone. You demonize them when you lose respect for them.
Man, that's big. That's big.
Yeah, brother.
That's real big, man. And that happens. And you know what? All right, community out there. All right, community out here. Listen.
Talk it.
Religion. My dad taught religion.
Here we go.
We began
you gotta get some work. It cut out a little bit, brother. Go back about 5 seconds. You cut out for a little bit. Go back about 5 seconds.
I said my dad taught me religion is division. Taught me religion is division. You know, we believe we're deep-rooted faith. Deep-rooted faith. You know, we're believers. But religion, he says, division. And I'm gonna give an example of something that I've had to deal with people that you know, I travel over here, travel over there, and I stop by with them. And whether they believe exactly what I believe or not, it's not the question right here. It's that the conversation that's had when people just simply say, "Oh, that person ain't nothing but a devil," and I'm just like, "What?" Because you just said we demonize people, and it's like, and you said it earlier also about how I remember I once was a kid before too. And then the scripture says, hey, listen, I think it was Ephesians. Hey, listen, guys, don't forget that you once were in sin too. We all are like one decision away from going to hell and one decision away from going to heaven.
Say it again.
Every day. One decision it'll be the trump card. It's like landing on chance and picking up, go directly to jail. Do not pass go. Do not collect $200. Every last one of us is one decision away from heaven or hell every single day. We don't have time to demonize each other simply because somebody is still wrapped up in their sin, as if we had never committed sin. Oh, I don't do that. What did you just say? You don't do that. It was that one thing that they did that justifies demonization of character and individuality. It was that one comment, that one action that they did that allows us to just to speak, to demonize their name when they're not there, or to look down on them when they are there.
Yep.
And we forget that we were once the ones that were out there, and we forget that we did something yesterday, or this morning, or 2 hours ago, or before we walked in the room.
Come on, brother. Come on.
So I think that this is really important, that we keep respect alive, respecting the human race, always allowing space for mercy. Yes. And when we're dealing with our children, we need to allow even more space, because when our children do wrong, they are still looking for us to do right.
Yes.
And as a man, all right, man, you know how, I'm a big proponent of speaking to every single bit of the audience, but this is just for men right now. As a man, our wives, no matter how much they do wrong, they are looking for us to do right. Every time.
Oh my gosh. Sheesh.
So if that lands on your back like a ton of bricks, brother, get a satchel and start lifting it.
You got to carry it, brother. I've been in some deep thought. Had a conversation with my cousin yesterday, and I said, let me tell you something. Thinking about my mom and my family, and I had a dream about my grandfather the other day where he gave me a hug, and it was just so real. So thank God for that. About being the man and standing up in the community. You still look to do it. And once again, not asking you to be Superman, not asking you to be perfect, not asking you to even take on the world, but within your household, within the people that you can affect, kids, wives, significant others, whatever it is, do the best that you can to the best of your ability and take counsel. We have to have more conversations surrounding this, because what I'm starting to see is a very, very slippery slope of us doing a tit for tat. Is that what it is? Tit for tat.
Tit for tat. Yes, sir.
Yeah. It's a tit for tat thing. I want my lick back. I gotta get back. Let me tell you something. You starting to spin around in circles because it leads nowhere. There's no winning that. There's just staying in the same place and more than likely moving backwards, because each generation gets lost because of it. So at some point in time, as a man, you got to come through and make the adjustment and say this, and this is not being hard. I'm not. And if you feel like this is being hard, then there's a deeper thought that needs to be had. Man, and then demonizing people, brother. You spoke a mouthful. We're not that same step that the person you're not above it. we tell you, the brother spoke about any decision, we're one decision away from either or. Life happens. Something happens tomorrow. I saw a brother, a podcast, and I want to send my condolences out to those two, to the brother and his cousin. So we have Gilly and Wallow who have a podcast, and I'm gonna speak on it because it weighed on me this morning. And Wallow had just finished he did 20 years in prison. Got out when he was 38, 39, something along those lines. For the past 2 to 5 years, they have been working very hard. Gilly started off as an entertainer, a rapper, and he's now this podcast guy. And this also has been almost a 20-year pursuit. Because I remember Gilly the Kid was on a mixtape back in the early 2000s, 2003, 2004, with Lil Wayne, Cash Money, whatever, and never quite made the jump to mainstream. And so now they got a podcast. They interview people. They talking a lot of positive things, and they've been grinding to the point that now they signed a contract earlier this year for I think it was upwards of over $50 million. Here's a guy who did 20 years in prison, got out 2, 3, 4 years just grinding every day, and got his money and continued to grind and continues to stay doing what they're doing. And then last night, Gilly loses his first son to a 23-year-old being killed, murdered in the streets, 8:30. So can you imagine receiving that phone call? So in the same time, this is what it shows you. In the same time, 6 months ago, you just signed the biggest check of your life, got the biggest check of your life for $50+ million. And within 6 month period, your life could be in shambles. So none of us are above a reproach. None of us are above anything happening to us. These things happen, and it can and then we have to respond to it, etc. So to look at other people and possibly not even understanding or trying to understand those people's stories, and then passing judgment. All right, we getting a little bit off subject, but I just thought I'd mention that we're not above it.
No, we're not. We're not, and this is one of those hard knocks of life too, brother, because there's going to come a time when you begin to develop this type of mindset where you see the distinction between, these opposites that we're referring to. And sometimes they're almost like parallels. Sometimes they are parallels. And the distinction is so small, it's so minute, but it means so much.
It means so much.
I mean, if you were flying in an airplane and you just slowly drift to one side or the other, an inch every quarter mile, and then go and fly hundreds of miles, you could end up in a totally different state, maybe even a different country. Mm-hmm. The end result is compounded. So even if it's a minute difference, then it can change the trajectory of our lives. And I think that that's important that we understand, because when we begin to make these small changes to our mindset to be able to accept more of accept people as they are and respect them as they are. I'm not saying that you have to agree with their choices, their decisions, but to accept it, and then move on your own way and to create greater responses to and gain greater situational awareness instead of reacting. Eventually, you begin to make decisions that may not align with the people that you were walking with originally. The people, if you were walking with a bunch of reactive people, you go into a restaurant and you have a few drinks, and somebody says, "What you looking at?" And the normal reaction was, "Whoop his butt."
Come on, brother.
All of a sudden, you start to think, why? And now there comes a tough choice on, do I fit in this environment anymore? Can I continue to go down this pathway with these? And it's not about me looking down on anybody, but my mind has changed. And if I decide to keep the change, so will my body. There's that old song, we said this before, SWV, I think is saying it, or some in Vogue or somebody like that. They said, free your mind and the rest will follow.
Mm.
So when these things happen and you take that time, just anybody takes that time to make those small adjustments, you will end up moving yourself. The trajectory of where you were headed is going to change. And who you're walking with will most likely change also, unless they are changing right along with you.
I'm gonna tell you what, they see you as that walking testimony. They start to see they all change paths as well. And you're speaking to that stable, that understanding, that knowing you. And you spoke about acceptance, because I think a lot of us tend to just tolerate things, and that adds up to resentment. We start to that adds up to resentment. Once you start to accept it, and then the next stage after acceptance is being welcoming. And when you get welcomed, let me tell you something, life changes, because now you're not being triggered. You're not carrying around that weight from tolerating that resistance, that resentment around in your heart. So man, we hit on some points here, man, and a lot of these things are some deep thought moments. But I think if we dive into them, and you can do that self, and please definitely comment and engage with your thoughts on what we're talking about, because I think this is what Community Beacon is about. It's about just getting better. It's about getting better, brother. Brother, I'm gonna let you go. I appreciate you getting on. I know you're on the move. What an awesome conversation, man. What an awesome conversation to be had with you. Guys, we appreciate you. We appreciate you for checking in. This was a deep one. I might replay it.
I enjoyed it.
Because it definitely, I'm gonna listen to it again. Because I love getting on here with you, brother, and being able to process these different thoughts.
Yeah, likewise.
Yeah. Any final words?
No, that was I'm glad that you came up with that title. I'm glad. I had no idea where we were going to head with it, but I like distinctions. I like it.
Yeah.
And then, man, you just opened it up. So that was good.
All right, guys, we appreciate you all. We will be back next week. This might be for the next couple of weeks, but it deserves that much thought. 6:30, man. We appreciate you all. We are checking in. See you next week.
Peace.